says. He says, we were crushed and overwhelmed beyond our ability to endure. That's a bad day right there. Has anybody ever had a day where you felt like giving up? Anybody ever had a day where you felt like you were crushed and you were overwhelmed? Maybe you were overwhelmed with your business. Maybe you were overwhelmed with your husband. Maybe you were overwhelmed with your kid rebelling. Has anybody ever come to a place where your situation was trying to overwhelm you? Paul says we were crushed and overwhelmed beyond our ability to endure, and we thought we would never live through it. In fact, we expected to die. Now, I want you to notice something, that in every hard situation you go to, there's always man's view of that situation, and then there's God's view of that situation. Because if you are a citizen in the kingdom of God, nothing happens to you by chance. Nothing happens to you by chance. But here's the key. You could side up with man's view or you could side up with God's view. And sometimes it's hard to side up with God's view. Paul, he identifies man's view when he says, we thought we would never live through it. In fact, we expected to die. You see, that was man's thought of the situation. That was man's perspective of the situation. But whenever you trust God, whenever you obey God, whenever you keep moving with God, ultimately He will reveal His purpose for that same situation if you just hold on. Are you following along? Because Paul didn't give up even though he felt like giving up. Even though he felt like throwing in the towel, he didn't give up. He kept trusting in the Lord, and he kept going to church. He kept reading his Bible. He kept going to work. He kept praying. He kept serving the Lord. And ultimately, God revealed to him the Lord's purpose for that hard situation, which was this. Listen to this. But that denotes contrast. But as a result, we stopped relying on ourselves and learn to rely on God. Touch your neighbor and say, God is teaching you something. God is teaching you something, right? Listen, this is what Paul learned. He learned God's purpose for his situation when he kept moving forward, when he kept trusting the Lord. Ultimately, that purpose popped up. You ain't going to understand it now that you're going through it, because all you're doing is feeling the pain. All you're doing is feel like giving up. But if you keep on trusting the Lord, He'll get you through it. He'll get you through it. And Paul, listen to what Paul says. Paul says, but as a result, now this is God's purpose, we stopped relying on ourselves. That sounds like the process of brokenness right there. That sounds like God was stripping Paul of some pride. Because pride always says, I can do it. Pride always says, I know. You ever met somebody like that? I know. I can do it. Let me do it. I can do it. That's what pride always says. And Paul says he stopped relying on ourselves and learned to rely on God. When the Lord takes you through the breaking process, He is stripping you of self-reliance. He is stripping you of pride. God is trying to teach you to rely on Him. And that hurts sometimes. That hurts sometimes. Listen to Psalms 34, verse 18. Psalms 34, verse 18 says, the Lord is near to those who have a broken heart and saves such as have a contrite spirit. He saves those that have a contrite spirit. He's near those who have a broken heart. You know what that word contrite refers to? That word contrite refers to the grinding something into powder. That word contrite refers to grinding something into powder. Sometimes God needs to grind pride out of our heart. Sometimes God needs to grind rebelliousness out of our heart. Sometimes God needs to grind stubbornness out of our heart, lust out of our heart. God has a way to bypass our body and go directly to our heart and grind them things that are blocking our blessing. Because oftentimes we are the main blockers to our blessing. And we have accumulated things in life. We picked up things in life that we allowed to creep in our heart. And we wonder why God is not blessing us. Is because we got some blockers in our heart that He needs to grind. Is this helping anybody here today? So God, through circumstances and situations, He grinds things out of our hearts. He grinds it. Maybe you're going through the grinder. I know you've never looked at God like this, but I want to suggest to you that God is the great grinder. He's the great grinder. You may think you're going through your situation for one reason, but if you keep trusting in God and keep obeying God, He will reveal to you the real reason. And even if it was the devil that tried to throw that situation, God has a way, throw it on you. God has a way to turn it around. And God has a way to redeem any situation. So my brothers and sisters, here's my exhortation to you this morning. Don't run from God in your brokenness. Run to God in your brokenness. That's what Hezekiah did. Hezekiah ran to the Lord. He went to the house of the Lord from a place of brokenness. And listen, God is trying to make you a better person. He's trying to make you a better person. Listen, the picture of the purpose of brokenness is found in the big, beautiful horse. Horses can be big and beautiful, or they can be wild and rebellious. They don't mind you leading them to get water. They don't mind you leading them to get food. But if they even think you're coming with a saddle on, they will kick and they will bite and they will buck because they don't want nobody riding their backs. They don't mind you providing for them. They don't mind you getting shelter for them when it's raining. But don't you get on their back. And the process of taming the horse is called the breaking process. And you have to break the horse in order to stop him from biting, stop him from bucking, stop him from kicking. I want to suggest to you that there's some people here that God is trying to tell you you're biting too much. You're kicking too much. You're not the only one. All of us kick at some times. This was the testimony of Apostle Paul when God was trying to get a hold of his life. When God was trying to run him down, God shows up to him, Jesus, in Acts chapter 9, and Jesus tells him, Paul, why are you kicking against me? Why are you kicking against me? You know what Jesus had to do? Jesus had to pick him up off his horse and body slam him on the ground. Jesus had to break him. Why? Because there was greatness inside of Apostle Paul that could not come out until he was broken. Hear me, my brothers and sisters. Brokenness leads to blessing. Brokenness leads to blessing. The problem with our generation today is everybody wants to be blessed, but nobody wants to be broken. Brokenness leads to blessing. Everybody wants to be blessed, but no one wants to be broken. Listen to 2 Corinthians 4:11. Listen to this. Yes, we live under constant danger of death because we serve Jesus. That's the brokenness. So that the life of Jesus will be evident in our dying bodies. That's the blessing. You see the relationship between brokenness and the blessing? You can't be blessed until you're broken. He says, yes, we live under constant danger of death because we serve Jesus. That's the brokenness, so that the life of Jesus will be evident in our dying bodies. That's the blessing. My brothers and sisters, God will not bless you until He could break you. He will not bless you until He could break you. And again, the problem with our generation is we want to be blessed but not broken. We want to skip the breaking process. And let me tell you something. Whenever you think you got a blessing, but you have not been broken, that thing will turn into a curse. In fact, it's not a blessing. It's a Trojan horse in disguise. Because some of y'all are thinking, well, I'm already blessed. I'm already blessed. No. If whatever you think you got blessed with takes you away from God, takes you away from the house of the Lord, takes you away from serving the Lord, that's not a blessing, that's a curse. Because we learn to handle the blessings of the Lord through our brokenness. Through our brokenness. God won't bless anything that He doesn't break. So, why should He bless you to love Him less? Why should He bless you to reject Him more? Why should He bless us to leave Him out the equation? See, some of us are here today and we're probably thinking, man, it's October already. How come I haven't been blessed? Where's my breakthrough at? It's October already. I want to suggest to you, maybe it's because you have not allowed God to break you. Maybe it's because you have not allowed God to break you. In my own particular testimony, my brothers and sisters, I must admit that the blessings I'm experiencing today have come from a result of my brokenness. People see my blessings today, but they don't recognize, or they didn't see my brokenness of yesterday. And when I first started to serve the Lord gave me these dreams and visions of going home from prison, and I was in prison, serving a life sentence, and I began to get these dreams of going home. Like I dreamed of being with my wife at church and worshiping the Lord. I dreamed of having a family. I dreamed of like preaching the gospel around the world. And I believed that I was going to go home one day, even though I was sentenced to life. And I remember when I first started serving the Lord, I was on fire for God. And somebody came to me and they told me, you know what they told me? They said, Brian, God needs to break you before he blesses you. And in my ignorance, you know what I said? I said, no. I said, no, that don't even make sense. I'm serving the Lord. I'm on his side. Why is he going to break me? That don't even make sense. And I rejected it. And I continued to serve the Lord. And I continued to have these dreams, you know, of going home. These dreams of serving the Lord. And then that message would come back to me again. Brian, before God blesses you, he needs to break you. And I remember I would say, no, he don't want to break me. He don't need to break me. Until it happened. Until it happened. As I was preparing for this message, the Lord reminded me of the day that I was broken. And I want to give you a window into my brokenness. I want to give you a window into my brokenness. I found it in my book, my autobiography. And I want to read this page to you. And it just reminded me how before God blessed me, he had to break me. Listen to what I wrote. And I was probably I was probably like 26 years old when I wrote this. Listen to this. My last parole reversal really knocked me down, spiritually and emotionally. I thought for sure I would be going home. I was confident God was going to answer my prayer, but he didn't. It was the first time I was ever really crushed since I started walking with God. I was used to God spoiling me, and now it felt like he was a million miles away. I walked around the prison yard confused. I laid on my bunk staring at the cement wall as I cried. I kneeled down in the chapel and cried some more. I started to doubt if it was God's will for me to go home. I wanted so bad to be mad at God. I wanted to scream at him, but honestly, I was too afraid of God to be mad at him because I didn't even deserve to live. Deep down inside, I knew it was only because of God's mercy I was still alive. A song by Jeannie Owens, which I'd never heard before, began to minister to my heart. Listen to the lyrics of this song. The pathway is broken, and the signs are unclear, and I don't know the reasons why you brought me here. But just because you love me the way that you do, I'm going to walk through the valley if you want me to. The lyrics awakened my soul. I had to make up my mind. It was time to lay down my dreams. Time to abandon my aspirations at the foot of the cross. I shared my heart with my wife, and eventually I let go of holding on to going home. God, it doesn't matter to me anymore if I go home or die in this prison. I will continue to serve you no matter where I'm at. About a year after that level of brokenness is when God finally released me out of prison after 16 years. He had to break me before he blessed me.